Good morning to some of you. Good afternoon to some of you. Um, I think this is the closest we're going to get to Australia for a while. My husband and I, we had a trip planned in this past February. It got canceled because of COVID. Um, so it's just nice to be this close to all of you. I'm honored to be here today. And as they said in my introduction, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. I've done early stage groups for 20 years. And so this presentation really does summarize what some of the people are feeling and dealing with, which I think will be helpful to all of you, I hope, and also to your the care partners who, just hearing from other people who are experiencing the same symptoms and challenges as some of you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to, this is a picture of a woman who was very dear to me all my life. She was with me when I was born. She died when I'm not going to really tell you that because then you'll figure out how old I am, but she died a few years ago at the age of 106. When Geraldine, in this picture, was 104 years old. She was a woman who worked very hard all her life, had a heart bigger than I can say, loved her family, and had an incredible personality and attitude, even through her journey with dementia, which started in her 90s and lasted until I said at her death at 106. Geraldine's life, like others, was filled with change. She lost 3 of her children and her husband, yet she chose to look at life as a gift, to spend her life helping others. She found joy in most anything, and I mean most anything. People loved this woman, and the staff in the nursing home where she lived the last 5 years of her life just adored her. I share this story with you because it's an introduction to life is a journey, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, by the time we get older, we have decades of experience and memories, some cherished and maybe some not so much. We have stories to share and some to keep a secret. We have losses that we've had to deal with that have affected our physical and social and emotional well-being. And finding moments of joy for some of us is pretty easy and for others is not. The words on this slide remind me of a very dear friend and someone who was in my early stage group for 5 years. His name was John. Throughout his life, he always had a positive attitude. And I kept asking him, John, you are so positive. After your diagnosis and after the initial anger that he felt, he really went on to accept it and had a saying of, oh, well, Alzheimer's is a, oh, well, because, oh, well, I didn't do anything to get this disease. Oh, well, I can't do anything about it. So I might as well accept it and go on. And he did. And he does to this day. So he dealt with his memory loss pretty much the way that he dealt with his life for 70 years. So we have choices. We have choices about how we're going to deal with dementia, how we're going to deal with the changes and challenges that we all face, whether we are a person with dementia or a care partner or a healthcare professional. So how we see our stories, how we see our life, how we see our diagnosis, and how we live with them. Are we going to dwell on the losses? Are we going to accept them? And are we going to move on through our journey of Alzheimer's as best we can? So it's really important to try to find those moments of joy, as I said. All of you would agree that we are so much more than memory, right? We have stories inside of us. As one person said, my old self is still inside of me. Or another woman said to me, I'm just an older version of my younger self. That same woman who said that to me, and I'm going to share this with you because it's kind of a chuckle. She said she was in my group for several years. Then she left the group. Years passed. She went on to live in an assisted living residence. And I saw her one day as I was visiting someone else at that residence. And I went up to her and I said, Betty, hi. And she looked at me like, I said, do you remember me? And she said, no. And I said, well, you were in my memory loss support group. And she looked at me and she said, if I was in your memory loss support group, why do you think I would remember you? So that was a chuckle that I shared with her at that moment, and she was right on the mark. So as care partners, as each other, as you're supporting each other, whether you're a person with dementia or a care partner, learn about the person. If you think you know a lot about the person, see if you can dig down and remind yourself of perhaps more experiences, more memories that you can share. Try to put yourself in their place. As I said, the support groups that I led for so many years, those people taught me so much. And I found that if I would try to really understand how they were feeling, I had to listen and be present, which we're going to talk about more in just a moment. So let's talk about our brains, shall we? We know that everybody's brain is different. Everybody's personality is different. Everybody's ability to compensate for some of the challenges and losses may be different. And a large part of that is due to what parts of the brain are changing and are affected. Do you know that a Alzheimer's brain, and this is done upon autopsy, obviously, let me back up a moment if I may. A normal brain, a healthy brain, weighs 3 pounds. A Alzheimer's brain weighs 2 pounds. And a brain with frontotemporal dementia weighs 1.5 pounds. And that is because there are different diseases. That is because they progress at different rates. And thus we see the atrophy and the changes in the brain upon autopsy as being very different and specific to those diseases. So let's talk about our brains and some of the challenges that we all face, and they are due to brain changes. So although there are many different types of dementia, they can be the same and they can be different in their progression, in the initial symptoms, and what parts of the brain are affected first and second, etc. But with most brain diseases, there are common symptoms. So spatial problems, and I'm sure a lot of you could be telling this story because some of you may be experiencing some of these changes. But spatial changes, going down or up the stairs, going from one floor surface to another, finding and sitting in a chair safely so you're not at risk of falling. And of course, our spatial sense really is important when we are on the road and driving. So the brain and the eye work together, as all of you know, but when there is damage to the brain, the eyes may not see things accurately. And of course, difficulty with decision making. I remember a friend of mine whose mother, they went out for lunch. The restaurant had extremely long and complicated menu, and she just couldn't make up her mind of what to order. And so she very cleverly said, I'll have what you're having. Short-term memory loss. We all have stories about a person with dementia not being able to recall what she had for breakfast or what she did recently. I remember a client from a few years ago when she was in the early stages of dementia. I would visit her and I would ask, "What did you have for lunch today?" And she would say, "I had a grilled cheese sandwich, chocolate cake, and a cup of coffee." And as time went on, she would tell me with little prompting, I would say, "I heard you had a grilled cheese sandwich, a piece of chocolate cake, and a cup of coffee today." And she would say yes. But as more time went on, she could not tell me what she had for lunch. And so I would say, "I heard that you had a lovely lunch today." And she would look at me and nod. I want to spend a moment on this slide because it's very important. We had someone when we wrote our last book, Moving a Relative and Other Transitions in Dementia Care. We had a professor from the University of California at San Francisco write a piece on denial versus lack of awareness for our book, because both Beth Spencer, the co-author, and myself felt it was really, really important to address with family members. So denial is a personality trait. It's a refusal to admit that something exists or happens, right? I'm laughing because we probably all use denial at some point in our life, whether it's about some of our memory changes appearing or whether it's something earlier in our life. But let's back up a moment and talk about denial versus lack of awareness. So insight is defined as awareness of one's illness and how the illness is affecting that person. Conversely, loss of insight is a person's lack of awareness into their own behavior or actions or needs. So a person can abstractly understand that they have dementia with specific symptoms, but not be totally aware of how it is affecting them. So let me give you a couple examples. A person may refuse to take medications because she feels healthy and doesn't need it, when in fact she does for other health issues other than dementia. Or a person feels she is perfectly capable of driving, even when a diagnosis of dementia has been made and her car has a few dents and scratches on it. "Oh, she's in such a denial." I have heard that expression through the years many, many times, but it may not be fair and it may not be accurate. So refusing to do things or resisting help, even though she may need it, can be a result of brain damage. So there's a part of all of our brains that gives us insight into ourselves, what we need, what we can do, where we might need help. It can help to know this so that we do not label a person's reluctance to do something as denial. Because if we do that, then we have a different reaction than if we accept that lack of awareness is due to brain damage and a person's actions is not denial. And I hope that makes sense. So it's really the will not versus the cannot. Sometimes people say the person will not do something when in fact the person cannot do something, even though the person with dementia looks very, very healthy and normal. This is a drawing from someone in my early stage groups. I used to do the exercise of having them either draw out or write out how they were feeling about having Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementia. And this drawing conveys a disconnection. And I really like this drawing because I think it really shows that a person can have or feel disconnected when they have memory loss. For example, maybe having trouble finding the right words, maybe having trouble doing something at that particular moment that they could do a little while ago perfectly well from beginning to end. Or maybe the person is feeling disconnected from people because she feels vulnerable or fearful, sometimes even ashamed. And there's really nothing to be ashamed about, as we don't do anything wrong to get dementia, do we? It does. It happens, and we are still researching why it is happening. Thank goodness for that. Here's another slide that comes from my early stage group. As you can see, if you look at the bolded letters, it is spelling Alzheimer's disease. This was an exercise we put together that people contributed to that shows their feelings of having Alzheimer's disease. So as you can see, they felt embarrassed by a disease that caused them to forget people's names. But then they reminded themselves that even if you don't have dementia, you can forget somebody's names. They felt embarrassed that they could not do the things that they once were able to do. They felt muddled. They felt like they were losing themselves. But in this group, as I'm sure those of you who are with Dementia Alliance International find great support and find that other people are experiencing these same problems, and somehow that gives us some peace. So this is something that you could apply these feelings to many other types of dementia, but this just happens to be spelling out Alzheimer's disease. So keep in mind that these words are from people who are in the early stages and who have the ability to express themselves. When I hear statements like these from folks in the early stages, I really do feel like they're speaking for all people with dementia, no matter what stage they are in, and for people who can no longer speak about their feelings. But I think that these feelings go from the beginning to the end of the course of dementia. So as you look at this slide, I guess we can't do this because we're on Zoom, but it'd be interesting to know if you feel and can identify with some of these statements from the people who are in the early stages. Let's look at another one. Again, these are quotes, and I'll give you just a second to look at it and see which one that you identify with the most. So I think that one of the things that jumps out for me on this slide is about the amount of energy it takes to sometimes get through a moment, takes to get through a task, that it just takes every day. It takes a lot of energy. When we expel a lot of energy, it can make us tired. When we're tired, it can affect our cognition. And then we have that cycle going again and again. So as the care partners, as you all are looking at this slide, I think the question to ask yourself, if my relative is not content or is agitated, is try to understand why. Ask yourself why. Why is my relative feeling angry or doesn't want to do much or is very sad? Is there something that can make the person feel fulfilled? And the question that I think is really important for care partners throughout this journey is, are we taking things away from the person with dementia because we think that the person with memory loss cannot fulfill some of the tasks before him or her? Are we taking over too soon, or are we going to give the person a chance to feel a little bit of independence, fulfilled, and whole? But on the flip side, there are some lessons that people have learned, and there are some insights that they have gained. Oftentimes people after these stages of what I would call the 3 A's, which are kind of anger, acceptance, and adjustment, they can feel more content with their diagnosis because they've gone through the process of accepting it. Doesn't mean that that process only occurs once. It can occur many times during the course of the disease. But I think that this slide also shows some of the strategies that people use. For example, getting distracted, getting involved, doing things, going places, outside, getting exercise, connecting with nature, so that they don't dwell on the diagnosis. I don't think I have to say too much about this slide because I think it says it all. Okay. Be here now, now be here. So again, these are words of wisdom, and so very, very true these days when we can all be so distracted by phone calls or texting or being on the computer, while at the same time, perhaps somebody else is trying to get our attention. So what people in my groups would say, be here now, please, and now be here. That the mere presence of being with someone with memory loss is not enough. We need to listen and pay attention. Listening is, I think, kind of a lost art in this day and age. We're eager to hear what the person has to say, but we're also eager to reply. So we want to acknowledge a person's feelings. We want to keep eye contact, offer as much reassurance as we can, whether it's through our words or it's through our touch, or it's just through our eyes, keeping contact with that person. And please, please, please put away all electronics. We can't go, I don't think it's probably any different in Australia or Canada than it is in the United States, where people are very rarely without their phone in their hand. They constantly look down and are preoccupied with what's on that phone and not paying attention to what is around them. So this is a slide that I put together because I think this is the biggest challenges for care partners and friends is attitude. What is your attitude as a care partner about your relative's diagnosis? What is your attitude toward helping your relative with some of the things that he or she may need help with? One man told me, I'm trying not to be angry at my wife. I'm trying to be angry at the disease. And that was a big challenge for him, but he kept telling himself over and over, and I believe that he succeeded. One of the other biggest challenges about attitude is by developing a good attitude, by developing some patience over time, I think can help many people not have any regrets. And I think that's really very important. So again, changing the way we communicate and how we interact with people with dementia is very, very important. So this is kind of what I was referring to a moment ago, that I really believe that the biggest communication problem is we don't listen to understand. We're just eager to reply, to get our words in, interrupting. And that's not necessarily the best thing for communicating with someone with memory loss, or in fact, between two people, no matter what their situation is. It's called being polite. It's called being respectful. So I want to move on to communication issues. And I think that the words oftentimes are harder to come by in the earlier stages. Sometimes this is not happening to a person until much, much later, But some people in the early stages do have problems or challenges finding the right word. As one man said, I know what I want to say, but the words just don't come out. It's almost like he was tongue-tied, he said. Sometimes our vocabulary shrinks or we substitute other words, but we put a great deal of energy into that to express ourselves. So maybe we have word substitutions. Maybe we can't come up with the right word for the pharmacy. I need to go to I need to find, that place where you get medications to help. And I said, do you mean a pharmacy? And she said, yes, I need to go to the pharmacy. Sometimes we repeat ourselves because we don't remember exactly what we just said. This is not deliberate. This is something that just happens with this brain changes, isn't it? So knowing that these and many, many other issues appear, what can we do as friends and family members of those who have dementia? When we get together, if you are getting together in Australia, we're really not getting together here much in the United States, but when we did and when we will again, for people with memory loss and in the earlier stages of Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia, or whatever the type may be, I think it can be very important to keep social situations brief, keep them small, keep them quiet, but keep them going as long as we can to keep the person involved. We have to slow down in what we say. We have to slow down in our movements because it can be very distracting to people. It can be very distracting to all of us. It can be very distracting to me. Give the gifts of time and space. Allow the person to talk. What I call white space. Just have silence. Silence is golden. A woman that I was working with a number of years ago, she was a mother of 5 children. She raised her family on the farm. And she said to me, Laurie, I love getting together, but they all talk so fast and I feel like they're talking over me. And then they ask me a question and I really have to think about what I want to say. And then I think it through. And by the time I get the words out there, they've gone on to another topic. Not a good thing. If we're asking someone with memory loss a question, then I think the most respectful thing to do is to give them the time to answer. Could feel like a very long time to us, but it's not to them. Many times when people talk to others, and I know that those of you involved in Dementia Alliance International have done this, have put together various things about what it's like to talk to people about memory loss. And in my group, people would say, I want to confide in someone that I have memory loss, but I'm afraid of what they're going to say. Or I did tell a friend I have Alzheimer's disease, and they said, oh, you don't look like it, which is, I think that's on your homepage, on your website. So it's not just an issue here, it's universal and international. As time moves on, there are problems with communicating. We may say less. The words may just not be there. But I have to say that oftentimes we communicate through our eyes, which can reveal how the person is feeling, whether it be frustration, anxiety, anger, concern, confusion. And also in the middle stages, sometimes we have to repeat statements and questions. And I think it's only fair when you're talking with someone with memory loss is to say the same thing over exactly how you said it the first time. So we want to repeat the statements or the questions the same way the second time as we did the first. And if necessary, the same the third time. So some of the tips that I have, and I'm sure many of you could add to this slide, is, I don't know if they do this in Australia, but when you're growing up in the United States, at least in the time that I did, they tell kids to watch, look, and listen before they cross the street. I like to take that and apply it here. Watch, look, and listen how the person is looking or acting before we communicate with them. So for an example, if you are approaching someone, just take a very quick inventory, how they're looking. How do they look? Is this a good time to start a conversation with them? Is this a good time to request that that person come to take a shower or come to the dining room for lunch? Oftentimes, if we just take those few minutes or seconds and we look at the person, we may have the information we need, whether we go forward or we hold back for a few moments. But again, allow plenty of time for the person to respond. Be at their eye level. I mentioned that a few moments ago. The main thing here is to help the person feel safe and secure. So we do that through our actions, through our words, and through the knowledge we have of Alzheimer's disease, frontal temporal dementia, Lewy body, etc. So if we understand the disease and we understand the person with the disease, we can help them. And in turns, when we're helping them, we are also helping ourselves. So then we move on to the late stage, and we know that people become quieter. We know that sometimes sounds or humming may substitute words. We know that sometimes there are many things that can bring comfort and security, whether it's doing something the person liked to do for years and years, or whether it's holding something. If sometimes people have an incredible tactile need to hold something, to turn something, to stroke something, can we give that to them? Can we provide that opportunity to them? I think we can. And sometimes people understand more than they are able to express. So some people may not have the may not have the expressive communication as much as they have the receptive communication. So they can understand us, they just can't say exactly what they want to say, or may need more time to say it. So we know what we do if we assume, right? What that does. So we don't want to assume anything. We don't want to assume what the person can do. We do not want to assume what the person can't do. But we do know that physical touch and hugs really does help a person feel safe and secure. Pointing, giving them white space, as I said before, silence is okay. Silence is okay for the person with memory loss, but it may be very uncomfortable for the rest of us. Oftentimes when I do in-face presentations, if I stop talking, people start squirming in their seats, they look down, they start rummaging through their papers. Oftentimes we don't know what to do with silence. It's something to try. How do you feel with silence when you're with other people? How does it make you feel? Silence can be golden and can be our friend. I want to share this with you. Every group that I did with people and for people with dementia, we ended every group like this. I don't know if Wally is on this Zoom because I can't see him, but if he is, he was in my group for several years. So let me just say these words. And if you can see them on your screen, say them too, but please don't unmute yourself. So let's just try to do this together. Are you ready? May we have peace. May our hearts remain open. May we remain present. May we have the grace to deal, come what may. May we have gratitude, and may we be a source of healing to others. So that is the end of my presentation.